Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show, the new and revamped version of the JD Rucker Show. For those who missed the last couple of shows, you may not be aware that we're making some changes. We're pulling away from the standard politics. And that's not to say that we're not going to talk about politics, but let's face it, every other show on Rumble, every other show on X, done by conservatives, it's going to be about the news of the day, right? It's like, oh, we got to own the libs, we got to push the MAGA agenda, or we've got to do whatever. And nothing wrong with that. I just didn't want to stick with the crowd. It's not my style anyway. Look, I'm more of an analyst when it comes to these shows. I'm not here to bring on a bunch of guests and say, hey, how do you feel about owning the libs? Hey, why don't you tell us how bad the Democrats are? It was important, very important, I think, crucial for me and others to participate in that discussion up until the election. But after the election, look, there's plenty of people out there. You can find them who will go through the news cycle and tell you everything that's happening, with the continuing resolution, with all of these various things. Now, there will be times, though, that I do cover politics, and it'll almost always be because I feel that I'm offering a slightly different perspective, or sometimes a completely different perspective than what's being put out there by independent media, or even legacy media. But for the most part, independent media, that's where I believe most of you are getting your news, and praise God for that. But here's an example. So apparently the new attack from the Democrats the last 2 or 3 days has been Elon Musk, President Elon Musk. Elon Musk is running the White House. He's the unelected puppet master of Donald Trump, and yada, yada, yada. And people, I've watched some commentaries about it, and they're like, oh, they're going after Musk. They're going after Musk. They want to try to stop Elon from getting involved, this, that, or the other. And I'm like, no, they don't. They're not going after Elon Musk. They have no illusion that the richest man in the world is going to listen to anything that they say on legacy media. He's probably unaware of what they're saying and what he does know about what they're saying. He doesn't care. He's not going to change his ways because he's getting bad comments from Chuck Schumer, okay? And so the target here is not Elon Musk. The target is Donald Trump. Their intention, the reason that they continue to echo this narrative is because they're trying to get under Donald Trump's skin. They're trying to play to his ego. They're trying to play to his why are they saying that Elon's in charge? I'm in charge. I'm the president-elect. I'm the one that's running this show, not Elon Musk. They're trying to get Trump to make Elon back down, or to stop listening to Elon Musk. That's the intention of all this. So, Lord willing, he will not listen to them. And it's possible. Look, you could say I'm a huge Trump fan, huge Trump supporter. But let's face it, he does have an ego, and that ego can get bruised, especially if he's having his adversaries and members of legacy media saying that Elon Musk is actually running the country. Ooh, that's no. Trump doesn't want that. Hopefully, and I think that he will, to be clear. I think that he will be the bigger man. He'll see through the facade. He'll see through the kabuki theater and realize they're just trying to get under my skin. Psh, don't listen to them. I'm running the show. Nobody doubts that. No need to pull back on the reins of Elon Musk, because that's really what these Democrats, these leftists, and corporate legacy media is trying to do. Well, as anticipated, we are seeing the rise of the next pandemic. It is being labeled as an emergency. It is something that we have to be super fearful of. Children, think of the children. Think of the children. Think of the chickens. Yes, we were talking about bird flu. And all of these crazy things that have been happening for the last really 4 years. Bird flu is not new. It's something that they've been kind of pressing out there for a while. And I've wondered myself, we've had bird flu, we've had monkeypox, we've had disease X, we've had all these various diseases that have been popping up, and I'm not sure if they're sending up test balloons to see if we're going to get scared of them, or if they're planning on unleashing multiple over a period of time. But it seems as if bird flu has won the prize, so to speak, as being the next major pandemic, and it couldn't have come soon enough, at least not for the globalist elite cabal. We don't want it, but they do. And I believe that they're going to use this to try to, as one of the ways, they're going to try to upend the Trump administration. Now, lest we forget, it is very possible that they will use multiple diseases. This isn't just because they tried COVID and it worked. People say it didn't work, except did it not work? I mean, like 80% of the population has been vaccinated, more than that probably. Yeah, I think it did work. It took away our freedoms, took away our economy, decimated into certain industries. It sent our children back a year, 2 years, sometimes more, as far as their development, their education. It stole from us. It stole our freedoms. It's laid the groundwork for future pandemics, such as what we may be seeing today. I'm not going to definitively say, oh my gosh, the bird flu is going to rise up and it's going to be this new freedom-stealing thing. It could be monkeypox. It could be some other variation of disease X. It could be a new version of COVID or some deadly flu or hemorrhagic fever. But based upon everything we've seen for the last, again, 4 years, bird flu seems to be the primary candidate for Plandemic 2.0. An article from Zero Hedge we have it cross-posted with permission over at conservativeplaylist.com. I'll skip through the part, which is the part for today's show. Bird flu emergency is part of the foundation for the next pandemic. Let's just go straight into the actual news or news and commentary from the pseudonym Tyler Durden over at Zero Hedge. Does California's bird flu emergency portend the next Trump-era outbreak? And Trump era is the key word there. I would argue, by the way, that had the election looked closer, in other words, had they truly believed that they could defeat Donald Trump with Kamala Harris or Joe Biden or anybody, then they would have unleashed Plandemic earlier. They would have tried to do essentially a repeat of the 2020 election strategy, which was to distract everybody with COVID and use that as cover so they could commit massive widespread voter fraud. According to the article, this week, California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency over avian influenza, aka bird flu. And while Newsom says the order was simply a precaution after one person in Louisiana was hospitalized with the first severe illness caused by the bird flu in the United States, one has to wonder, WTF? And it's true. I mean, there have been some cases of bird flu, but only one person in the United States has had to be hospitalized for that. And I'm even skeptical of that, because they were saying that bird flu, it was either bird flu or monkeypox, that somebody had actually died down in Mexico. And the World Health Organization came out and said, see, this is a killer disease. And then the actual officials there in Mexico, they're like, no, that wasn't it. This person died of something else. And so yeah, I'm not even convinced necessarily that the bird flu hospitalization in Louisiana was strictly based upon the bird flu, or maybe not based upon the bird flu at all. Back to the article, and this is from Newsom in a Wednesday statement. This proclamation is a targeted action to ensure government agencies have the resources and flexibility they need to respond quickly to this outbreak. Whenever they say stuff like that, by the way, just as a pro tip for reading politicese, there's always, these government agencies, you don't need a declaration of emergency for them to have the resources and the flexibility. What it means is that they have less accountability. They can go act, ready, fire, aim a lot more easily than they can. And maybe not even a lot. It's propaganda more than anything else. It's fear mongering. It's trying to get the indoctrinated to cower in fear. Back to the article. According to the governor's office, bird flu has been found in dairy cows in Southern California. Therefore, the emergency is needed to contain and mitigate the spread of the virus, despite the fact that there have been no reported cases of person-to-person transmission in the state. Zero. What makes this extra interesting is a tidbit at the end of the new documentary, Thank You, Dr. Fauci, notably an infamous op-ed penned by Fauci and his former quote-unquote boss, NIH head Dr. Francis Collins, in which they suggested that their dangerous research was a risk worth taking. A risk worth taking. Well, maybe for them, not for us. Which brings us back to California, where the new emergency declaration will empower state and local agencies with additional funding and flexibility in dealing with the virus that nobody in the state has caught yet. As the Epoch Times notes further, while not linked to human bird flu cases, a raw milk dairy based in California issued a voluntary recall several weeks ago after avian influenza was found in a lot. Now, just a quick funny story. This is right before Thanksgiving. And I am on, for those who don't know, I'm on the ketogenic diet. And so I don't generally drink milk. And I love milk. But because Thanksgiving was coming up and because I had some family in town and we were, I took a break from keto. So it's like, I'm itching for some raw milk. So we purchased some raw milk and it happened to be from this dairy. And as it turned out, there's all this hoopla and there were a lot of stories that were coming out at the time about how raw milk's dangerous. Raw milk will kill you, Well, as it turned out, they couldn't actually find any of the bird flu in the raw milk. They found it at one store in one single lot. In one case of this bird flu. So the war against good food is ongoing. And does the bird flu have something to do with it? Or is it part of the war? Yes, that is one of their tools. They're coming after raw milk. California is one of the, we have so many restrictions here. One of the few things we don't have restrictions on is raw milk. So that's been one great blessing of living in Commiefornia. But it looks like they're trying to change that too. So back to the article. All of these illnesses in the United States, except for the Louisiana case, have been mild, and the vast majority have been among farm workers exposed to sick poultry or dairy cows. This year, more than 60 bird flu infections have been reported, with more than half of them in California, according to the CDC. In the Louisiana case, the infected person is older than 65, has underlying medical problems, and has been in contact with sick and dead birds in a backyard flock. So it's not like he's just walking around and he catches bird flu. Or drinks some raw milk and catches bird flu. No, he's old. I don't know if it's he or she, but this person is old. They have underlying medical problems, and they have their own flock, including dead birds, in their backyard. Last month, Canadian officials reported that a teen in British Columbia was hospitalized with a severe case of bird flu. CDC officials did not answer a question about whether the new U.S. case and the case in Canada had any similarities or differences, directing reporters to ask Louisiana officials. Health officials say bird flu is still mainly an animal-ish health issue and that the risk to the general public remains low. There has been no documented spread of the virus from person to person in the United States or anywhere for that matter. Now, of course, I am not a doctor, and I'm not going to offer you any medical advice regarding how to handle the bird flu or how to handle monkeypox or COVID or anything like that. I can just tell you what I'm going to do, which is I'm not going to sweat it. I'm going to watch for and go after those who would try to use these as predicates to take away my freedom. But outside of that, this is a story to watch. I would stay frosty, though, because, again, seems to be the foundation that's being laid for another pandemic, the foundation that's being laid for another excuse to attack President Trump, to take away our freedoms, to send the United States down a very dark hole, probably an even darker hole than we saw during the COVID era. Commiefornia has become the most corrupt state in the nation. It has been for quite a while, usurping such states as Illinois and Pennsylvania and even New York to take the crown as the most corrupt. And when I say corrupt, I'm talking specifically about, I'm not talking about bad policies or anything like that. I'm talking specifically about politicians using their power to fill their own coffers, their friends' coffers, their their cronies' coffers to essentially steal money from the people, usually in the form of taxpayer dollars being funneled somewhere. And the state of Commiefornia has been able to even usurp corrupt cities like Chicago or Philadelphia or New York, where corruption has been rampant there for decades. No, California has taken the mantle. And I think this next story, this bombshell, really, if it does turn out to be true, and I have no reason to believe that it's not true, but this next story is, it's not even, it doesn't even stand out, really. I mean, this is standard operating procedure in this state that I'm stuck in for now. But according to an X post by James Lee, you can find his handle as at 5149 James Li. Says, I may have uncovered a massive scandal in California. Gavin Newsom claims $24 billion for homelessness went missing. Well, I found evidence of California officials possibly allegedly embezzling hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars through a sketchy Cayman Island group. In response to an April 2024 audit, which exposed that California did not know how money going to solve homelessness was being spent, Governor Newsom responded by stating the results did not surprise him, but added that California has taken part in unprecedented investments. What kind of unprecedented investments, you might ask? Well, this is where things get sketchy. Enter Todd Gloria, the mayor of San Diego, who has been on a tear, making housing deal after housing deal, which he claims will address homelessness. But when you look at the deals being done, the price tags are astronomical. A $145 million project yielded 407 units. A $150 million project yielded 270 units. I don't know about you, but these look more like luxury condo investments disguised as public housing projects. But this is where things get even sketchier. This is one investment group that pops up over and over again in all these city housing deals, the Chelsea Investment Corporation. Here's what we know about the Chelsea Investment Group. A developer that specializes in affordable housing, incorporated in the Cayman Islands, headquartered in Carlsbad, California. The founder is Jim Schmid, Schmid, and the CEO is Charles Schmid. I wonder if they're related. Are you ready for the real doozy? Pay attention. Property records for their headquarters show that in 2016, it sold for $3.5 million, with $3.15 million financed. But in 2023, another transaction for an undisclosed price, but $68 million financed. And there's the picture of the building on the screen. Look, I get it. Things are getting crazy out there. Inflation is rampant, but that's what, like 21 or 22 times more than what it had been financed for, 7 years before? No. None of this jibes. And here's the kicker. The lender happens to be the San Diego Housing Authority, which, again, doesn't make sense. The building looks to be owned now be owned by 13th and Broadway CIC LP, a shell company of Chelsea. But here's where there begins to be more questions than answers. How did the property jump 20 times in value in 7 years? Why is the San Diego Housing Authority functioning as their bank? One thing we know, when Todd Gloria, the chair of the San Diego's Budget and Finance Committee, records show that the founder and then CEO of Chelsea Investment Corp was a major donor to Gloria's campaign. Is this quid pro quo? A dig into UCC filings and liens, Chelsea Investment Group is leaving a nasty paper trail all over the country. So their entanglement with public housing in San Diego or Commiefornia, I would advise you start looking in your local area to see what turns up. Final thoughts from James Lee. This is just the tip of the iceberg in the search for billions of missing dollars. Legacy media have failed. It's up to independent journalists to uncover the truth, and big help to a couple of various people helping to expose this. I actually had posted a video about this the other day over at thelibertydaily.com, and somebody else had done basically the same deep dive. But seeing it out here written out, seeing the actual evidence being posted, it's I can't say. I mean, I can't get around those two major facts. The cost, the loan amount jumps up 21 or 22 times, and that the San Diego Housing Authority is the lender. That's, I mean, this doesn't just, it's not even just on the surface. This requires an absolute deep dive because prima facie, this is corruption. Any journalist worth their salt in the local area should be diving into this, and apparently the paper trail is not very hard to find. The only reason that any of them might not do it is, well, if they're part of the problem. I would say the vast majority of my audience is very, very hopeful for the future. The election of President Trump has been just already, we're seeing shockwaves. We're already seeing results even at this early stage, but there are still concerns. He can't do everything. He's going to do everything in his vast power to protect us, to protect our nation, to defend the Constitution, to protect our freedoms. But that doesn't mean that there won't be risks, challenges. We're already seeing wars popping up and rumors of wars popping up across the globe. Will he be able to stop all of them? I think so. But what if he can't? What if, for whatever reason, cooler minds, cooler heads don't prevail and we find ourselves in the midst of something tragic? What about natural disasters? What about just the idiocy of the globalist regimes across this planet that are trying to do everything they can to destroy our food supply? They want to control the food, and they want to make sure that we're not eating the good stuff, especially as it pertains to protein, and specifically as it pertains to beef. Beef cows seem to be the main culprit for every boogeyman propagating bad guy out there. As a part owner of an all-American, patriotic, freeze-dried steak company, I am very, very blessed, pleased, and honored to be able to offer my wonderful audience, an opportunity to take advantage. If you go to worldviewbeef.com and use promo code JDR, you will get the maximum possible discount. And there are other discount codes out there that are less. It's not like with certain companies where, it doesn't matter which promo code you use. Use JDR. I own the company. Use promo code JDR and get the maximum discount at any given moment at worldviewbeef.com. All American, no mRNA jabs. It's just the good stuff. So check it out, worldviewbeef.com. Well, it's Friday, and we're now well over a month into the alleged drone incursion over New Jersey and other places. I say alleged because I know there's definitely an incursion. We just don't know if they're actually drones. They are allegedly drones, but maybe there's something else. Nobody knows, apparently. Well, somebody knows, but they're not telling us. They keep telling us there's nothing to fear here, but we don't know what they are. They tell us they're not a threat to national security. They're not a threat to public safety, but we can't tell you anything beyond that. They know what they are, they being the powers that be, especially within the deep state. The question is, why don't we know? What is the big deal here? And unfortunately, as is always the case, the story has sort of died a little bit. People aren't talking about it, despite the fact that there's still no answers. You're getting some posts still coming up on social media. There was news yesterday about more areas of New Jersey being completely shut down from drones being able to fly there. I don't know. I'm not sure why the story disappeared, but that's one of the reasons why we have revamped the JD Rucker Show to continue to talk about things, even if it's not top of the mind in the news cycle. Of course, the continuing resolution and the budget and the government shutdown, that's what everybody's talking about because that's what everybody's talking about. It is what it is. A gentleman by the name of Luis Elizondo, he's still talking about it. He went on a couple of shows and gave us some pretty good insights. This is a former intelligence officer who has some ideas. First, he went on with Don Jr. and explained to him, asked the question really, why aren't we shooting these down?
We have the capability to shoot it down. We just won't, or we can't, right? And then somebody brought up a really good point. Well, so the White House position was, well, we don't want to endanger the public, right? If we shoot one of these down, it come down, it could hit somebody's house. And yet there's these incidents with the U.S. Coast Guard where you have up to 10 of these things literally stalking a U.S. Coast Guard cutter. and you're out in the middle of the ocean. Why can't you bring it down there? Right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. It's the explanation of, oh, by the way, these are all lawful, so don't shoot them down, but we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know who owns them. We don't know where they're going. We don't know what they can do, and they are oversensitive military installations. I think is not only utter nonsense. I think it's a disservice to the American people.
These are important questions to ask, and unfortunately, we're just not getting any answers. He also went on with Chris Cuomo, and this is the part I like. This well, I shouldn't say I like it. I don't like the fact that what the implication here, but just for those who want to who are still thinking that maybe this is aliens or something like that, Elizondo offers an alternative perspective.
There are some people who have reported that these things are coming out of the water and they're zipping off away at fantastical speeds. If that's the case, what we may have here is a confused public. We might have some people reporting true UAP events, followed by a Department of Defense response by launching drones to go ahead and try to find these UAPs. In the old days, when you had a sensitive military installation or a Department of Energy facility and you had an incursion across a perimeter, you would usually send up a helicopter. But that requires having to wake up a pilot and starting the helo and getting it started and flying it. Now we have the technology to literally geofence a facility. And if something comes across, automatically these drones deploy to their pre-planned coordinates and start doing the racetrack mapping back and forth. Which some of these drones appear to be doing. They just kind of go back in this lazy racetrack, back and forth, scanning for something. There is some anecdotal videos. They'd have to be analyzed to see if they're legit or not. But some of these show traditional drones trying to intercept, some of the videos now online, intercept some of these lights. And they wind up getting shut down and falling out of the sky. And meanwhile, the big set of lights just kind of disappears, as been reported by some law.
It's definitely an interesting take. Let's say that China or someone else is engaged in an incursion, and they're using technology that we're not familiar with, that we don't recognize properly. Maybe they're evading radar. Maybe there's a test, and I say China is the most likely culprit here, but it could be anybody. Really, drone technology is not something that's exclusive to the United States and China. We look to China because this sort of has their whatever fingerprints sort of on it, I guess. But the idea that we have a system that is AI driven, perhaps, or as he said, with pre-planned coordinates, pre-planned flight course. I don't know. It sort of makes sense to me. But then again, so did the nuclear sniffer theory. That made sense to me as well. There's a lot of questions out here. The only thing that we know for sure is that either it's our government engaged in some sort of nefarious action that they're not willing to tell us, or our government trying to thwart a nefarious action that they're still not willing to tell us. Those seem to be the only viable options here. The one point, as far as he was making, the one thing that I would argue is that if this is some automated drone response to aerial incursions, then I believe we would have known about that, because that's not something that you try to keep hidden or keep secret, right? I mean, that's something that you would want our adversaries to be aware that we are defending ourselves, just to dissuade them from even trying, or if they do try to try to prevent them from, or I guess not prevent them from taking it further, but you get the idea. If they want to test it, then surely by now we would have known that that's what it was. So I'm not a huge fan of the theory, but we have to put out all the theories because, again, all we have right now are theories. The people who know, and there are a lot of people who know what this is. They're just not saying anything. But the people who know have their reasons for not telling us. And while some people might say that it's for our own good, I'm a big fan of transparency. I want to know just about everything. I mean, so many things get pushed off and listed as top secret or above our pay grade or whatever, because and it's done under the excuse of national security and to keep keep the public in the dark, just because they can't do anything about it. If there's a danger, if there's a risk at all, then I, as an American citizen, believe that I have the right to know what the danger is, okay, and to be able to act for myself and for my family accordingly. And that just doesn't seem to be what these people are wanting us to do. It is no secret that I am not a fan of artificial intelligence. I think I've made that abundantly clear. I think that the downfall of humanity as a species will come as a result of artificial general intelligence, which can be achieved when you hook up AI to quantum computing, which is driven by a nuclear power source and cooled with the most advanced cooling technology known to man. You need all four of those components in order for it to work, and we're not far off from having that. As a matter of fact, some would say that we already do have it, and AI, AGI, artificial general intelligence, is already at work in the world today. Now, there are biblical implications. There are good theories out there that highlight the idea that artificial general intelligence will play a major role in the end times. I've seen this evidence. It is compelling. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about 2024 AI, what's out there in the wild that we know of right now, and of course, into 2025. An article over at reclaimthenet.org by JD Rucker. U.S. report reveals push to weaponize AI for censorship. A new U.S. report highlights federal attempts to regulate AI for censorship, proposing free speech-focused legislation to protect open innovation. Now, there was another article that I'm not going to bring up, but I might bring it up later. But it was calling for President Trump to get on AI and get this figured out and under control, basically rein it in within his first 100 days of office. I believe that was over at PJ Media, but I haven't read it yet, so I'm not going to talk about it. This one I have read, and this is encouraging but also very terrifying. According to the article, for a while now, emerging AI has been treated by the Biden-Harris administration, but also the EU, the UK, Canada, the UN, etc., as a scourge that powers dangerous forms of disinformation and should be dealt with accordingly. According to those governments and entities, the only positive use for AI as far as social media and online discourse go would be to power more effective censorship, moderation they like to call it. A new report from the U.S. House Judiciary Committee and its select subcommittee on the weaponization of federal government puts the emphasis on the push to use this technology for censorship as the explanation for the often disproportionate alarm over its role in disinformation. Now, they like to say, they being the I don't want to call them the bad guys because this is a gray area, but those who want to control AI for the sake of using it as a tool against us, they will point to that unregulated, uncontrolled artificial intelligence is what's driving all the disinformation on the internet through social media, especially X, and this is just a bald-faced lie. They know it's not true. Okay, they can point to little examples of like the fake videos popping up and whatever, but it's not true. The disinformation, first and foremost, is coming mostly from them, those who are claiming to fight disinformation. And number two, disinformation is we still have the intelligence, the discernment to be able to tell what's real and what's not. At least some of us do. Many on the left do not, but that's a discussion for another day. And even many on the right don't either. But hey, it is what it is. But the quote-unquote good guys, and we'll see how good they are, they suggest that it should be left completely open and that free speech should reign. And we'll see which direction we end up taking, because I do believe there is a quote-unquote correct answer to this gray question. But back to the article. The interim report's name spells out its author's views on this quite clearly, because the document is called Censorship's Next Frontier, the federal government's attempt to control artificial intelligence to suppress free speech. It's pretty straightforward. Very rare in D.C., by the way. The report's main premise is well known, that AI is now being funded, developed, and used by the government and third parties to add speed and scale to their censorship, and that the outgoing administration has been putting pressure on AI developers to build censorships into their models. What's new are the proposed steps to remedy the situation and make sure that future federal governments are not using AI for censorship. To this end, the committee wants to see new legislation passed in Congress, AI development that respects the First Amendment and is open, decentralized, and pro-freedom. In other words, good guy AI, right? That's kind of what they're suggesting here. The report recommends legislation along 4 principles focused on preserving America's right to free speech. The first is that the government cannot be involved when decisions are made in private algorithms or data sets regarding misinformation or bias. The government should also be prohibited from funding censorship-related research or collaboration with foreign entities on AI regulations that leads to censorship. Lastly, avoid needless AI regulations that gives the government coercive leverage. That's an important one. The committee notes that the current state of affairs, where the Biden-Harris administration made a number of direct moves to regulate the space to its political satisfaction via executive orders, but also by pushing its policy through by giving out grants via the National Science Foundation, once again aimed at building AI tools that combat misinformation. But if allowed to develop in a free and open manner, AI could dramatically expand Americans' capacity to create knowledge and express themselves, the report states. Now, obviously, I'm very torn because on one hand, what they're saying is that government wants to suppress free speech through AI, and we want AI to help to enable free speech. So I agree on the first part. You shouldn't be using AI to suppress free speech. But then again, I also disagree with the second part. I don't think that AI should be used to help enable or enhance free speech. Now, call me an AI doomer, which I kind of am, but this, to me, smells like a very slippery slope. If given the choice, if it's a binary choice, of course I'll take freedom, AI helping with freedom over AI censorship. But with that said, freedom, once it or anything else is put through the AI grinder, it is fundamentally changed. It's no longer the freedom that we experienced before. And there's no way for me to easily parlay that or portray it in a way that is easy to understand. Call it a gut feeling, maybe. Perhaps you feel the same way. Perhaps you want to expand on it. I will always take recommendations on how to express what I'm feeling. And I usually take those from my wife. But if any of you can sort of hear what I'm getting at and can help me to elaborate on my fear, on this concern that I have regarding AI, please reach out to me. You can hit me up on Twitter, X. I have open DMs, x.com/JD Rucker, or you can just send me an email. Go to jdrucker.com/talk, jdrucker.com/talk. Well, it is Christmas season. Christmas is back this year after a 4-year hiatus. Under Joe Biden, we are now excited to have an actual Christmas. And if you are seeking the right gift to get, there is one place where you should definitely be shopping, and that, of course, is mypillow.com. Go to mypillow.com/JDR. That automatically puts in the JDR code. I believe it does. Double check and make sure that you put in code JDR at mypillow.com. They've got specials out the wazoo. Obviously, the classic collection is on sale for as little as $14.88 with promo code JDR. They've got Price Buster this and just great stuff. And keep in mind, when you're shopping for people, a lot of this stuff is truly gift worthy, like the slippers and stuff like that. So mypillow.com/JDR, use promo code JDR, get the maximum discount, and have a Merry Christmas. Whether you've been a prepper for a long time, or maybe you're just getting started, you're just looking around and thinking how crazy it is. We usually cover the basics. You get your food, you get your water, you get your ammunition. Don't forget your ammo. You get your battery chargers, solar battery chargers, or whatever. But a lot of times I think people will forget their meds. Okay, whether it's chronic meds, antibiotics, I think a lot of people don't even realize that you can stock up on that stuff. They go to the doctor, they go to the pharmacy, and the pharmacist said, oh, here's your 2-month supply or whatever. Well, you can actually stock up on a lot of these meds by going to jdrucker.com/meds. You'll talk to the good folks over at Jace Medical. They can get you a 12-month supply of certain prescription drugs. They can get you emergency meds, all sorts of good stuff, things that you may or may not need, but it's always good to have it on hand because I guarantee you, even if you don't think you need it today, you might need it in the future. jdrucker.com/meds. There was a terrorist attack earlier today in Germany at a Christmas market, very, very crowded Christmas market. A terrorist drove their car. The last report I saw was that it was a Saudi Arabian national who drove their car at extremely high speeds through this crowded Christmas market. You could expect that at a Christmas market, chances are there's going to be a bunch of Christians there. And yes, the driver of the car, the terrorist, was a radical Islamic terrorist, approximately 50 years old, who drove through and killed, last I heard, approximately 11 people, injuring 80, maybe more. I'm not going to play the video. It was hideous. But I do want to point to the reporting from corporate media, which is not as hideous, of course, because they're just issuing propaganda, whereas the terrorist actually killed people. But it still makes me mad. It really chaps my khakis. Here's the post from the Associated Press. A car has driven into a group of people at a Christmas market in Germany. A car. I guess it's a self-driving car. It's not being driven by a murderer or a terrorist. It's just a car. Car was driven. They hate us. They being the legacy media, the radical left, will do anything they can to promote and encourage lies. And here's the funny part, and it's not funny at all actually, but it is sickening, is that as much as AP tries to cover up the reality of this terrorist, this radical Islamic terrorist, as much as they try to downplay it and hide the facts, they too would be easily targeted. There's nothing they could do to prevent them from being targeted unless they were to submit to Allah, submit to Islam. Now, this is an attack. This is not an attack against the Islamic faith. This is an attack against those who use Islam as an excuse to commit horrendous acts, such as what happened today in Germany. And it's an attack for sure against legacy media that continues to pretend like there's no challenge, no problem, no mass immigration, mass refugee resettlement across the European Union as well as here in the United States. No, not a problem. Open borders, still working. Nothing to see here. Don't worry about the massive terrorist attack. It was just a car that was driven through. Just happened to be people in the way of the car. As a matter of fact, maybe we should blame the people for being in the way of the car. I'm sorry for getting annoyed and sarcastic, but you don't hate legacy media enough. I've long said that our addiction, really, to smartphones, to mobile apps, to always having everything at our fingertips, everything is available, whether it's cameras, videos, news. A lot of people have gone to almost smartphone-only lifestyles. I have not. I choose to use my phone as a phone, sometimes as a texting device. I don't have very many apps on there at all. I don't even post on X through my smartphone, which I know is really weird. People call me a boomer as a result, but yeah, I will maintain as much anonymity as possible on my smartphone. I even turn off locations. How do you get around, Rucker? What about the GPS? Yeah, I'm that nerd that actually looks at a map. I know, crazy talk. Anyway, but my little ineffective boycott is not going to change the way things are. And it doesn't matter if there's 50 of us, 100 of us, 1,000 of us. Wouldn't matter if there was 1 million of us. Wouldn't even matter if there was 50 million of us. There's enough people in the world, and especially here in the United States, who rely on their smartphones for their lives. And that's unfortunate, but it is a reality, and they're going to take advantage of it, especially in this coming year. According to InfoWars' Sean Miller, he says that 2025 will be the year of digital ID and increased fraud may be used to justify it. In other words, there's too much fraud in there, too many things that can go wrong. It's better to have your smartphone tied to biometrics. That's basically what they're saying. This according to corporate analyses. His bullet points say digital ID replaces ID cards with smartphone apps, of which various systems are being deployed throughout the globe. Systems tie a person's biometrics to their app. There's a push to include more biometrics and even behavioral and activity monitoring for greater identification abilities. Look, I am a huge fan of turning off any and all tracking. As a matter of fact, if I'm not going to recommend this for everybody because I know there are certain benefits to being able to be reached. I have benefited myself. There are times when having a smartphone has gotten me out of a jam or made it to where I can find somebody that I needed to find or whatever. So I'm not just poo-pooing on it and saying, no, go analog or just erase all digital. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you look, if you have the means, the capabilities, the detachment from others in society, and you can just go without a smartphone, go without a mobile phone altogether. Heck, go without a computer, go without the internet. I would love to go back to a time when we got water out of a well or at the river and got our power from wood. Would be great, but I'm not there, and I'm chances are, if you're watching this show, you're not powering your video player through a coal burner. But with that said, those who can do it, great, do it, because they are trying to get us as locked into our devices as possible. Next bullet: while 2025 will see a massive increase in digital ID apps going online, mandatory biometric scans of all citizens for classic ID programs have become standard practice in many countries throughout the first decade of the 21st century. We'll talk about other countries later. I'm more worried about what's going to happen here next year. In a December 11th webinar by Trinsic, it's a leading infrastructure for issuing and accepting reusable ID credentials, it was stated that half of U.S. states will be debuting mobile driver's licenses in 2025. Identification fraud, watchdog groups, and related organizations have recently published multiple reports on the increase in digital financial fraud, often tied back to identification impersonation in the cyber domain. The relationship of government interaction, banking, digital ID apps, and biometrics is rapidly becoming more intertwined. They're going to tell us, and they're in the process of telling us that security is everything, that banks have to be secure. This is one of the reasons they're going to push not just for digital IDs, but also for a digital dollar. I know that Donald Trump has come out against central bank digital currencies. Praise God for that. Hopefully he sticks to his guns on that. But then you see the rise of cryptocurrencies. Now, the two are very much opposite. One is centralized, one is decentralized. But that's not going to stop them from trying to ride the wave of cryptocurrencies, ride the wave of Bitcoin's continued rise, and try to use that to force us into a digital payment system. It's one thing to have access to Bitcoin. I am very much in favor of Bitcoin. I like the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies. With that said, a government-controlled cryptocurrency, a digital dollar, that I am very adamantly opposed to. They will try to equate them as being basically the same because they will both be on blockchain. But the difference, though, is that with a central bank digital currency, the end user is always going to be the bad guys, the people that you don't want in charge. And it may not even be the government. It could be associated with the Fed. It could be associated with private industry, with private banks. We don't know how it's going to manifest. At least I don't. Maybe some of you do. Maybe some of you have done the research and formulated a hypothesis, but I have not heard any so far that are definitive. I've heard some good ones. There are some good conspiracy theories out there about cryptocurrencies, about digital dollars, central bank digital currencies in general. The end goal here, the way that they get to a one world economy and a one world currency to drive that one world economy, is by launching all these various central bank digital currencies in the central banks across the world, and then having some sort of cataclysmic event, something that forces us as a society to to bring it all together, to have just one central bank digital currency to rule them all. And then that will be under the control of the globalist elite cabal. They will determine if you get to use your money, because your money will be their money. You will own nothing, and you will pretend that you are happy. This is where they're heading. And every step that we take along the way, incremental or not, whether it's leaps and bounds or little baby steps, we are getting closer to that reality. And digital IDs through your smartphones tied to biometric identifiers for security, that's the catch-all. It'll always start off as optional before eventually becoming mandatory. It'll always start off as a test before it becomes ubiquitous. That's how they operate. We need to wake up to it, because tomorrow, at some point, sometime in the very near future, it's going to be very difficult to operate in the United States of America without a smartphone that's tied to your biometrics, that's tied to your bank accounts, your identification, your social credit score. It's tied to everything. If you have the means to be able to go analog, now's probably the time to start getting that ready. Since our show is being shifted in a direction of being more conspiratorial, there's going to be the occasional story that is, we'll call it experimental, a story that has maybe a 50% chance or even less sometimes of being accurate, but it's worth noting because it could be true. I always look back to how wrong many of us were. If you'd said, for example, back in, say, mid-2019, that the government would be able to get us to completely lock down and decimate the economy over a disease that was essentially a bad flu, then we would have said, no way, we would never comply. And yet, the vast majority of people did. The vast majority of Americans, freedom-loving Americans, allegedly, wore masks everywhere they went. The vast majority of Americans got injected. So, no, I'm not going to pass on a story just because it's probably not true. Such is the case of this latest one from Natural News. SD Wells over at Natural News says, drone psyops solved. Chinese drones from light show in September used by Biden regime to control American thoughts and create anti-religious alien invasion narrative. Now, I've heard this theory long before the drones. I mean, I think if you are in the conspiracy theory world, you know that the idea, one of them, it's a combination of a biblical theory as well as a straight-up secular conspiracy theory. The idea that they will try to manipulate us through a fake alien invasion. And they'll use this alien invasion as a way to bring us further away from the faith, to manipulate Bible-believing Christians into thinking that perhaps their worldview is wrong. So this could be the case. Let's read through these bullet points from the article over at Natural News. Psychological operations, PSYOPs, are military actions aimed at influencing perceptions and attitudes to coerce desired behaviors by exploiting thoughts and actions often considered a form of brainwashing. The use of social media platforms like Twitter during the Iraq War highlighted the potential for PSYOPs, with fake news and fake followers contributing to manipulated narratives. Recent sightings of mysterious orbs of light and large drones in the sky have raised concerns about government-run PSYOPs and the manipulation of public perception through advanced technology. President Biden's acknowledgement of authorized drone operations over New Jersey hints at a coordinated effort, possibly involving China, to create elaborate drone shows for public consumption. The current focus on alien and drone-related phenomena is part of a manufactured PSYOP to influence beliefs, divert attention, and shape global reactions according to political and globalist agendas. Now, obviously, I am a very big fan of the notion that oopsie, wrong button. There we go. I'm a very big fan of the notion that our government, elements of our government, and as well as the globalist government itself, they are both involved in PSYOPs through our deep state, through our uniparty swamp, through corporate media, control over corporations themselves. These PSYOPs are designed to to herd us in a certain direction. One could say that COVID-19 itself was a psyop. That's not to say that, I think a lot of times people believe that psyops have to be completely manufactured. That's not the case. A psyop can be rooted in partial truths. Did COVID exist? Yes. There was a COVID pandemic. Now, the question is, well, there's a billion questions about it that I'm not going to get into, but they didn't have to pretend like there was COVID. They actually had COVID. And then they used our fear and manipulation through media to drive us in a certain direction, to give them certain powers, to possibly even use it to steal an election. Well, is this the same thing? Are drones and the orbs? I'm glad that they mentioned the orbs too, because those are separate phenomena. Many of them are coming out during the day. You don't see the drones during the day, but you do see orbs during the day. We'll see. We'll explore that deeper in the future. But could this really be a coordination with China or someone else, somebody else with the technology, with the means to be able to get the American masses prepped for a quote-unquote alien invasion or just even alien contact in general? It would seem that it's possible. And whether or not that's happening right now or it's going to happen in the future or it never happens at all, it's something that we should, as properly thinking American people, as many of us being Bible-believing Christians, we should take into account the possibility. Look, here, it's almost 2025. Anything is possible. Anything can happen. Don't get lulled into complacency just because Donald Trump won, just because things are looking up in certain areas. Because before you know it, everything that you think is normal could go south in a hurry.
I have one kid. You have 5 kids.
That's what you have.
How do you? That's incredible.
It's kind of like being an FBI agent. You're always kind of monitoring them and making sure everyone's safe.
Makes good sense. I'm actually a real agent. Well, not an agent. I'm actually a deputy sheriff.
Are you really?
Right there. Many, many years.
Are you serious?
For real life, real life.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you're a sheriff.
Yep.
Played at Princeton. Pro football player. Greatest superhero of all time.
Never drafted to Major League Baseball like you for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Thank you very much.
Knuckleballer. How do you hit a knuckleball?
You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
That's the whole point.
That's the beauty of it. We may have always played on different sides, being the superhero or the supervillain.
Supervillain.
But we have a lot more in common than I thought that we did.
Which is shocking, because one thing's for sure. Genesis Gold Group is a company that we both trust. They make safeguarding your IRA or your 401k as simple as possible. And I need simple,
That's right.
I'll be honest.
And with their stellar reputation, they're as solid as the gold that they sell.
Like this gold right here. So call Genesis Gold Group today at 1-800-200-GOLD.
What is that?
This is what they call a prepper bar. So like you can break off these little pieces? Oh, it's on both sides.
And it's great because you can carry that around small. And
Oh yeah, and you can literally use it to spend.
Or it's not like this one.
What?
This is a big fella. This is a really great one.
Is that real?
This is a real one. You want to hold it? It's heavy.
Holy smokes.
That's pretty great. Yeah, you can get them one of those from Genesis Gold yourself.
Hey, you guys see this? Look, check
Dean,
this out.
Dean, that's my kid's college tuition money. Hold on, I'll be back. Dean!
Yeah. Who's the supervillain now, huh?
Yeah. That's my goal, Dean!
So the CR passed the House, and there seems to be a lot of questions, a lot of confusion as to who actually won. Is this a victory for Trump and the Republicans? Is it a victory for Mike Johnson's side of the Republican Party? Is it a victory for Democrats? Sure seems like a victory for Democrats, because every Democrat that voted for it voted in favor of it. There was not a single nay vote amongst the Democrats. As a matter of fact, more Democrats voted in favor of it than Republicans. It's like, wow, that's crazy. So they must have won, right? That seems to be a lot of the sentiment. But then there's the sentiment that, hey, the government didn't get shut down. We cut from a 1,500-page bill down to like a 110-page bill. It's a victory for Republicans. And now, it's like, oh, well, I don't know. Who won? The correct answer is that nobody won. The American people lost big time on this one, because we have more spending, and more spending than we even had before, which was already way too high. The Pelosi-style spending, the Biden-style spending, that was already still in place. And we didn't cut from that at all. We added to it. But then, on top of that, we didn't get the separate bills, which would have been an extremely important, and perhaps even a defining moment for Mike Johnson. a way for him to say, "Hey, look, I can be Speaker of the House. We're going to do things the right way. We're going to vote instead of putting everything in this omnibus, cramnibus, whatever bus. We're going to vote on this individual bill, this individual bill, this individual. We're going to fund this all separately, all individually. Forget about all this whole cram it all in stuff." This would have been a defining moment for him, but instead he buckled, and he buckled because I think that if he tried to do separate individual bills, then the Democrats would have not voted in favor of it, even though it would have been the same thing, right? Because they desperately, and it's not just the Democrats, it's the uniparty swamp as a whole, they desperately don't want bills to be split out individually because they know that their favorite bills would not make it. The only way they can get a lot of their stuff funded is by sneaking it in through omnibus bills. So that's why they were so against it, and that's why Mike Johnson had to cave and put it all together as one, even though he had already promised people such as Representative Thomas Massey that he was not going to put them together. He caved on that. He caved on the debt limit. President Trump wanted the debt limit essentially removed until 2027. He's now pushed that to 2029 when he wants the debt limit to come into play again. It's an arbitrary number. We can debate whether or not it is even effective. President Trump says it's not. I tend to side on the opposite end. You know, I like the fact that there is a debt limit. I know that it's unnecessary. I know that it doesn't actually have a benefit. If we're just going to keep pushing it anyway, what's the point of having it, right? But you know, I don't know. It's maybe a symbolic victory for us if we were to have the debt limit. Because here's the thing. Republicans claim that through Agenda 47 they're going to be able to reduce spending. So they can do that. And if they reduce it enough, then the debt limit won't matter, right? Except it will. Because we know that with interest, with entitlements, with all the various must-haves in there, it would be almost impossible to not hit the debt limit. Our national debt is going to rise. It is never going to drop. We would have to go into insane levels of austerity. Doge would have to basically take over and cut everything for that to happen, and that's not going to happen. We have high expectations, but I don't think that they're going to be able to do enough to actually start reducing the national debt. So that's a discussion for another day. Back to the CR. So who won? Nobody won. But the important part for the Democrats, and the reason that Hakeem Jeffries had everybody who was willing, anybody who was going to vote nay, he told them to vote no vote or present. He wanted 0 nay votes. He wanted to outvote the Republicans so he could take credit for this, so he could say that this passed because it is a Democrat bill. But more importantly, Elon Musk didn't weigh in nearly as much as he did yesterday and the day before. President Trump didn't weigh in at all publicly. So he gets to go out there, and the press will back him on this. They'll say, look, this is a Democrat bill, basically. Mike Johnson totally caved. This is a Democrat bill. Democrats got everything they wanted. They didn't. They didn't get anything that they wanted, really. I mean, only symbolic victories. But it's all about narrative. It's all about optics, and we're seeing it. Okay, we're seeing it out there in the blogosphere. We're seeing it on social media. Republicans are like, oh, this is awful. This is awful. Look, unless the two big things that make it awful for Republicans would be the not increasing the debt limit that President Trump wanted and not voting as individual bills as the liberty-minded folks in Congress wanted. Those are the only two things that were given up, really. Compared to yesterday, when it was like, oh, they got to sign it because President Trump wants it, Elon Musk wants it, everybody wants it. That's the one that we want. Not much changed, but enough changed to where, again, this is kabuki theater. Government's going to still continue to spend way too much money, but at least we get disaster relief for those who need it. We get farmers get relief. There are some positives in this. But it's still, it really is.